Hello, hello. Hello, hello.
Good morning.
Welcome. And I'm Connie Baxter Marlow, and this is Andrew Cameron Bailey. And we want to thank Catherine and Peter for opening hearts and setting the stage for this talk and for the rest of the weekend. And we are bringing Indigenous cosmology and quantum science together to bring a synthesis for understanding how loved we are by a conscious, loving universe, which will allow us to open our hearts and walk in alignment with all of creation. Once we understand the true, what we consider to be the true nature of the universe, which indigenous way of knowing, the indigenous way of life, is a symbol of and clues to how to do that. And quantum science has brought in some factual information that supports this beautiful way of life that you're witnessing here this weekend. And we are going to bring in those aspects of quantum science that support this so that we know the Western mind can open and start to live this way. And my beginning with all this, I questioned as a child or a young person what was missing in the paradigm that had humanity out of balance. And my life has been a journey to show me those pieces, because the answers you get depend upon the questions you ask. So I happened to ask that question, and my life became a journey that brought the native, very visionary native elders into my life to show me this oneness and this interconnectedness of all things that we're all witnessing here this weekend. And so I'm going to share what I've learned from that. And Andrew's life has been quite different, but we've come to the same conclusions. And one thing I'd like to say is that today is the birthday of my first child. She turns 35 today, and that birth set me on a course of activism that I could not raise my children in alignment with the Western paradigm because of what I knew about the nature of the universe. Once you understand and really get it, it changes everything. All your decisions, everything you do. So I just want to honor that birth, and that's what's brought us here today. So here's Andrew.
Good morning. So I don't know if you can see the sun symbol at the bottom there. And in a certain sense, we're talking about the new science, the science where the Western paradigm and the indigenous understanding that's been going on for a couple of 100,000 years come together at last in our time and create something absolutely new. It was necessary that I'm a white man, that my people brought what we brought. We brought a lot. And it's wonderful that we're finally in the era when we are recognizing all of the other people who we call the indigenous people. Now we're all indigenous to planet Earth. We're all humans. We all bleed the same red blood. However, we've been separate. We've been separated. And our work has to do with bringing us back together. And that equation there, which those of you who know Kokopelli, who does not know Kokopelli? Right, we're in Sedona. Here's one. Kokopelli, I was looking for something that would be a symbol for the wisdom of the native peoples of the world, of the entire planet. And that's not easy to find. And Kokopelli jumped out and said, me. So Kokopelli equals MC squared. That, folks, is the new science. Indigenous wisdom, indigenous cosmology, indigenous understanding of the nature of the universe, combined with what we have brought through our science and through everything that all of us have done on this planet forever, to come to an understanding that is essentially brand new. It's not about going back to some past time, like the Garden of Eden, we left or we got thrown out and we were coming back. But we are talking about the Garden of Eden. We are talking about heaven. It is possible in what we call the trust frequency, and that's the title of our book that many of you, I think, do have that book, and if you don't, we'd love you to have that book one way or the other. If you buy it, we love that. If you don't want to buy it, we'll give it to you. It doesn't matter. That's not the point. And all we can give you here is a very brief and hopefully entertaining and inspiring overview of this work that we are bringing. Okay, that makes sense? On Monday afternoon, what time, Connie?
3 to 5.
3 to 5 at the Sacred Center's yoga. Seven Centers yoga. Sacred, yeah, of course. We are going to be doing again, very short, but an in-depth dive into the trust frequency. What does that mean, and how do we get there? When we're in a state of trust, the world is different. Magic is normal. It is simply another way of being. You could call it heaven on earth. You could call it nirvana. We simply call it the trust frequency because it doesn't have all that, almost sort of baggage of all the different things from the past. Okay, Connie?
So what you're going to hear today is a synthesis of our 139 years on planet Earth, what Spirit has brought to us. Andrew has a science background. You forgot to mention your science background, but what I want to say is that this isn't indigenous cosmology, it isn't quantum science, it's a synthesis. It's something that we're bringing to the table from our perspective, that our 139 years on planet Earth, our 2 lives, because we were born to do it, has brought to us. So we're bringing that gift to you.
So, Connie just gave away my deep, dark secret. I'm a scientist. Right. I used to be a professor of organic chemistry in South Africa, where I grew up, and I had the incredible, opportunity. I was born in England during World War II. I was born in a bombed-out city called Coventry. You probably know Coventry because they make things like Jaguar motor cars and Triumphs and things there, and various other reasons for Coventry to be known. But it was a pile of rubble. My dad looked around and said, moved us to Africa. I turned 4 in Africa, surrounded by Zulus and monkeys and the whole tropical and subtropical reality that is so very different from the England where I might have grown up had we stayed there. And in my science training, everybody gets this, you hear about quantum science, you hear about Albert Einstein, you hear about E = mc squared, you hear about all sorts of strange and mysterious and non-logical things that are suddenly jumping into science exactly 100 years ago right now. 1905, Einstein's general relativity theory came out, and it changed the world. It changed at least the Western, because it's not just Western, it's Japanese and Indian and Chinese and on. But it changed the scientific paradigm radically. It opened it up, and what we're going to talk about today is how it actually ties in exactly with what the indigenous people and the ancient rishis and Vedic masters in India have known forever. Okay? They just didn't know it in the same way. So I think it's really interesting that through the crazy scientific experiments that cost billions of dollars, we're now learning what every Lakota shaman knows already. And speaking of Lakota shamans, we're going to have our friend Bosco come up and open in a second or two with a beautiful Lakota sacred song. And this is a sacred gathering. It's interesting bringing science into the sacred. We're talking about the coming together, because really the separation it's not really separate. We're not really separate. We think we're separate, so it's time to get over that. And we think that this and that and the different religions and the different ways and understandings are separate and different. I'm just going to say how it came together for me. I learned a tiny bit about quantum physics, a ridiculously tiny bit. I was a chemistry and math major, And so physics was a minor for me. And I never did have a great inspired physics professor. I wish I had, but I didn't. So I had this really sort of vestigial idea of quantum science. Then I decided, yeah, I'm done with that. I'm teaching college. I want to learn something that really interests me. And that was social anthropology, comparative religion, and not the Buddhists and the Christians and the Jews and so on, but how do the Apaches think? How do the Australian Aborigines think? How do they see the world? And that just sounded to me really interesting. And what happened is just, I'm in the middle of studying the Australian Aborigines and their dream time and the way they understand the universe and the way they express it, which is kind of poetic. It's really like poetry. And somewhere in there, and I was 21 or 22 years old, I realized that they were talking pure, poetic, quantum science. And so maybe that's the first inkling I got that indigenous cosmology and quantum science had something in common.
And for me, those elders that came into my life, one of whom was Wallace Black Elk, one of the great Lakota elders. And I always call him a walking phenomenon. And I spent 15 years in his presence, bringing him to the people, saying, hey, everybody, listen to this. This is important. This is the true nature of things. We can be something else. Just listen to what this guy knows. And after about 10 years, someone asked me, have you read the book, The Holographic Universe? I said, no. 3 people asked me. The third person put it in my hand. And the amazing thing is I read it. And what I discovered was that that book was explaining Wallace Black Elk's reality, what he was accessing. So, with that introduction, we'd like to call in the ancestors, okay? Because we're honoring Wallace here. We're going to have Wallace on the screen with, in some interviews that we did in the 90s with Sally Ranney, who has actually written the foreword of our book and who is a major environmentalist. So we've been at this a long time. But we're going to bring in the ancestors. We want you to think of your ancestors because it's our ancestors that laid the foundation for our lives today. And they're out there wishing us well and bringing us information and guiding our lives. You know, the native people, the ancestors are a very big deal. I always thought my ancestors were dead and gone, right? I know, for one thing, my ancestors are driving my life specifically with some of the projects I'm doing. I won't go into that. So, so think of your ancestors. Just open your hearts to your ancestors. And Bosco will come and do a prayer, and he will do a song that will bring in the ancestors. And then at the end, we will close and release the ancestors. So it's bringing in the spirits, bringing in the ancestors, so that all wisdom that has come to pass on earth will be here with us today. So. And he's with his assistant, Janelle. Jody.
Does anybody in the audience have a lighter?
Yes.
Please. Excuse me. Technical difficulties.
Bosco, would you like to say a little something about your singing?
Hello, my name is Sylvester Bird. My nickname is Bosco, and I'm from the Lakota country in South Dakota. And Grandpa Wallace, I played with him many, many years. And, I'm a song keeper. My people back home. So there's many songs. And a lot of these songs are very sacred among our people, especially calling of the ancestors. You must be strong in the mind, the body, and spirit. Because there's room to be filled with spirits, our ancestors, when the songs are complete. And I want to thank you to my son-dancer brother, Gil, my girlfriend, Jolene, and everybody else in this room. One thing I'd like to ask is, when I start singing a song, I'd like to ask everyone to stand, respect the song. I know last night we kept standing there, lady's a little bit sore. I'm okay. So, I think Gil's ready. Gil, you ready?
Come in.
Okay. I hope at this time we're going to say a prayer. And I'm done with my prayer, and it's in the song. Oh, Nagashla, Ateva Kantaka, Katia Dopa, Unkimanka. I want me to bless Royate. Oh, I'm particularly Unkimalapo. Let some tell me Takio, Bayutaki, and let some tell me Takio, Hoyeva, in Kantaka. Oloa, Kina Iakiayo. Now, some power now they were to give it in Khan, Dagani City Disney, Dagani Sita Disney, Kata Kutasha State. Then you know you have war, Blazy, the town you keep it, it's a hard to chapel or Unki Kilapo. It's not how we chose in a warm block in a war, it's a hard to chapel or Unki Unkile, Apo, Aho, it's out there.
Way of Oh, we talked to you. Way up.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, ancestors, for joining us here today.
So we are raising the vibratory frequency of the entire universe. I don't know if you realize that, but that's actually really what we are here doing today.
It's absolutely true. So we feel that this gathering is the third great synthesis, okay? This is the time, okay? There's been I'm going to use that word synthesis a lot because something new is coming, and a synthesis means something comes that's new, okay? The first synthesis was in America, the first 50 years in Plymouth, Massachusetts, from 1620 to 1675, the Mayflower Pilgrims and the Wampanoag Indians lived in peace and friendship. This was the beginning of the American mind, the American spirit, and American democracy. It's shrouded in misconception and misunderstanding at this time, but what happened there was a very unique synthesis that brought forth a vision of freedom that has yet to be realized, but we're in that process, okay? The next great synthesis was the Constitutional Convention of America that brought in the Iroquois Great Law into the principles and ideals that the Mayflower Pilgrims and the early settlers brought here. And they synthesized together to create the Constitution of the United States. And that has yet to be realized. The promises that America made to the world of freedom and abundance for all has yet to be realized. But we're in process, okay? And this time now, and this event here, is another synthesis. You've heard these elders speak of oneness, of coming together, and this is the time to understand that it's all been a process, everything that has happened to date. There's been a shadow in humanity of all races, and there is a light in all people. And that's what this gathering is about. And so I feel that this is a true time of synthesis right here, right now, because these elders are coming forward to meld with all people in our hearts to go forward so we can realize that dream that America brought to the world. So that's our feeling about that.
So when the white ancestors first came here, there was something going on in the Americas, and I think you could call it participatory democracy. It was there were many, many similarities. And if you go down south to where they had the big cities, you know, the big indigenous cities, they were modeled kind of remarkably similarly to Europe. So there's something about the acquisition of wealth and so on that really changes people. But there was, at the same time, a great deal of democracy going on in this country, which we white people could learn from. And I don't know how many of you have thought about this, but think about 400 years ago. 2020 is going to be the 400th anniversary of the landing of the Mayflower, which was really the beginning of something. And what were those guys doing on that little ship? They were breaking away from the kings of England, from the absolute monarchy that had been going on for centuries and was still assumed to be, that was it. That's the way it was, that's the way God planned it, and it was never going to change. Guess what? It changed. And those people, and it was tough, it was treasonous, it was illegal. They escaped from England, they lived in Holland, and they ended up coming over here. And they met the native people and lived in a great deal of peace and friendship and harmony for 54 years, more than half a century. People don't realize that. It fell apart later. Yes, it fell apart later. Nobody's denying the difficult stuff that happened later. However, there was a magical time there in specifically Plymouth, Massachusetts. Now, here are some words from a beautiful elder in upstate New York, Orrin Lyons. Most of you are aware of Orrin. And here's what he said. Here's what the Iroquois brought to the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. See, I'm a foreigner. I just have to get my history straight here. And he said, in our, namely the Iroquois perception, all life is equal. And that includes the birds, animals, things that grow, things that swim. All life is equal in our perception.
So there were many other aspects of the Great Law that came into the Constitution. We won't go into that now. We just wanted to mention that, in fact, there has been a synthesis of Native and Western minds in the past that has brought forth a huge step in the evolution of consciousness of humanity. And that time is now for the next step. So we are it. We are the people we've been waiting for. So we want to bring you some tools today to allow you to open your heart and walk in alignment with this conscious loving universe. So this Hopi prophecy that...
So let's have a word from the Hopi. We're going to look at a very few words from a few different indigenous cultures across our beautiful planet. Here's a quote from, or a story or a prophecy from the Hopi. When birds fall from the sky and the animals are dying, a new tribe of people shall come unto the earth from many colors, classes, and creeds, who by their actions and deeds shall make the earth green again. They will be known as the warriors of the rainbow. That ring a bell, folks? Is that us? Because we're evolving. This job of being humanity is not over. We've got a next step. We call it Humanity 2.0. Just kind of a fun way of saying, in the sort of computer language, like the next version. Humanity 2.0. What is the nature of the next step for our species? Once we learn everything we have learned through these past centuries and millennia, we have the capacity to move to a higher state of consciousness, to a more harmonious way of being, to a more beautiful manifestation of what it means to be human.
And we in this room and this gathering aren't the only people who get that. There's a large movement in the consciousness field, as many of you probably know, to oneness, to this Humanity 2.0. And so there's many avenues to touch base with this if your soul is calling you towards it, which obviously it is because you're here. So
here's a very brief something about Humanity 2.0. Anybody taking notes? The fully evolved human manifests the best features of all previous cultures. We are part of nature, not above it. We're aware of the scientific perspective, yet not ruled by it. We're tuned into a higher reality, and yet we're fully present in society, in the world. A synthesis occurs. You've heard that word half a dozen times already. A synthesis. Elements coming together form something new, which brings forth something that has never been on the planet before. It's an evolutionary step or an evolutionary leap for our species.
And I'd always known there is something coming on this planet that's never been here. And after a sweat lodge with Grandfather Wallace, Black Elk, whom you're going to meet, he said, man has doubted the Creator since the beginning, and that doubt has plagued him. I knew at that moment what's coming on this planet is trust. We never trusted, fully trusted. So that's what our work is about. And one thing I wanted to honor an elder who's here today, Jim Beard, who is a very good friend of Wallace's and made a special effort to be here. So he's a wonderful elder, and welcome, Jim. Glad you could make it.
Glad to be here.
So yeah.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about what science brings to this story. So we're going to sort of bounce back and forth between the indigenous worldview and the science worldview that is pretty much brand new and it's emerging. So one of the first things, there are actually really only two things out of the whole of quantum science that we can really point at and say, you know what, that relates to what we're talking about. The first one is a term called quantum entanglement. Anybody heard that term? Quantum entanglement. That means, and it's scientifically established and provable, that everything in this entire universe, and whatever other universes there may be beyond this one, everything is entangled, meaning we are one. Connie and I are entangled because I love her and I adore her, and vice versa, I sincerely trust. Exactly. So entanglement occurs between, say, a pair of electrons in a scientific experiment. That's the way they actually prove this. The spin of a pair of electrons, they always have, one spins this way, the other one spins that way, so they're in balance. And if you separate them by 1,000,000 miles and then change the spin on this one, the spin on the other one changes in real time, not the speed of light. That's slow, that takes a long time. Instantaneous, permanent, full-time connection. That's what entanglement means. It's also what oneness means. It's also what non-duality means. If anybody's aware of the Hindu saint Nisargadatta, who wrote a book called I Am That, it's very much about, and there's a real emergence going on now in the sort of spiritual world. 10 years ago, people weren't talking that much about oneness. Everybody was trying to get enlightened. And then all of a sudden we realized, wait a minute, hey, we're all part of this amazing, evolving being, because as you'll see, we believe the universe to be alive, conscious, and evolving. It's having this incredible experience of being a universe, just like we're having this incredible experience of being a human being. The other, So there's another picture that's I think it's hard to see. It's a really beautiful picture, and it's these two spirals, this entangled pair of spirals, and in there are just about every indigenous symbol you like to find, all sorts of rock art symbolism, and the idea there was just to sort of present an inspiring picture that would be more than 1,000 words that I could say here. The other aspect of quantum science that is relevant here is it leads us to the idea that we create reality with the power of our consciousness. And this trust frequency work we do, this is what it's about. It's about creating reality with the power of our consciousness, understanding what that means and how to do that, and ultimately how to live in a state of trust instead of in a state of fear, at which point everything changes. So the other one is called, the other phenomenon is called the observer effect. One of the things they learned way early, just about probably between 1914 and 1927, is that you could never really understand everything about, Newtonian science, we can understand everything about everything, and if we had all the facts, we could predict the unfoldment of the universe forever. All of a sudden that broke down. All of a sudden we discovered that the universe really was more like a giant, massive potential. Nothing actually existed until it was observed. Einstein said, wait, Einstein never actually bought it. You know that? He was a traditionalist. He was like, wait a minute. Are you saying that if a mouse opens its eyes and observes the universe suddenly jumps into being? Yup. Difficult as that may be to conceive of, without us observing the universe does not exist. So we actually have a purpose. Think about it. I know the Hopis and many other native people say we sustain the universe with our ceremonies, with our consciousness, with our awareness. We hold the universe. Without us, it would fall apart. They're absolutely correct. Science has now proved that. So the observer effect is what, out of the undifferentiated potential of everything, all of a sudden, something puts its attention on something else, and that reality jumps into existence. Understand that there is an infinite number of realities. They exist in different frequencies. Like people talk about heaven. Where's heaven? Heaven's right here. It's just tuned to a slightly different frequency. I was talking about 15 minutes ago. We're actually already here, in heaven. We forgot. Or nobody really told us. So they told us something different, like you've got to die to go there, and if you've been good, maybe. Right? It's not like that. What it is like is wake up, live in trust, open your heart, and this is where we are. This is already heaven. Ah. And so this last slide here is kind of, the entangled observer effect. We're all totally interrelated. There is a beautiful Lakota term for that. What's the term again? Exactly. So, as I said earlier, the indigenous people have known this stuff forever. And we're beginning to find words in the English language, like entanglement, to express these really timeless cosmic truths. So what does science do? We're still sticking with science. We go looking for the macrocosm. I think we're all aware of the Hubble Space Telescope. We needed to get a telescope up above Earth's atmosphere so that we could see with clarity that was not possible otherwise, right? You could put a beautiful telescope on top of a mountain and get some amazing images. Look what happens once we get out of Earth's atmosphere and then start applying computers to analyzing the information that's coming in. We start to see extraordinary structures that to me look biological. It looks like I'm looking into the cellular structure of something. It's alive. Ooh, what's going on here?
And hanging out with Wallace Blackout, let me tell you, he goes there, the native people travel interdimensionally. He goes there in a flash. He walks around inside eyeballs. This is how I discovered this magical universe, not with a telescope, not with a what Andrew's going to show you next, but just sitting and listening to Wallace Blackout. So,
and I have to say, we have the wonderful David Swallow staying with us and his beautiful wife. And they told us some stories the other night. And it was that. And Connie's been telling me these experiences that she's had as a result of listening to Grandfather Wallace. And I was sitting there just mesmerized, listening to David's shamanic experiences. That he took me on a serious shamanic journey just sitting in my living room. Whoa. Okay, so we go up into the macrocosm in science using essentially telescopes to look and see what's out there. There's another direction you can go into the microcosm. What's in there? What's in here? How deep can we go? So we built this crazy device in Switzerland. It's called, get this, the Large Hadron Collider. And obviously, Large Hadron Colliders are designed to collide large hadrons. And a large hadron is simply a particle with mass, like an electron or a proton. And what they do is they smash these things into each other at something approaching the speed of light, and then look to see what happens. And they find things like the Higgs boson, which seems to have cosmic implications. These subatomic particles they're discovering. One really interesting one is, if you ask the question, what holds the universe together? How about glue? That'd be good, right? Glue. So go into quantum physics and you will find a particle whose job is to hold things together. It's called the gluon. I didn't make this stuff up.
we have another word for it, but we'll get to that.
Now, the real question of this talk, and we're about halfway through the talk, is what is the true nature of this universe of which we are a part? We don't just live in it. We're not separate from it. We, in fact, are it because we're entangled and because we co-created, at the very least, through our consciousness. We are part of the universe. There's one of the answers right there. It's conscious. Now, I know I'm doing a lot of talk, but we're going to get to Indigenous in a second. And Connie can.
No worries.
She'll kick me if I go on too long. We were at a conference. There's a really beautiful conference like this one, but it was called, it's ongoing. It's in Holland and in Northern California. It's called Science and Non-Duality. And it looks into quantum physics, the implications of quantum science, and the ancient Vedic spiritual path, which you could use the word non-duality for. In other words, we've broken up into all these particles, and now we're trying to find each other and come back together and find out what the big picture is. And there's a book called The Conscious Universe. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, because my physics teacher in college did not tell me the universe was conscious. Then there's another, go to the Conscious Universe section of a bookshop and look and see how many books you find called The Conscious Universe. There are 5 that I've discovered so far. They each have the same title, The Conscious Universe. And at this conference Connie and I were at in San Rafael, California, were 2 of the authors of these books. One is a man named Dean Radin, who's the chief scientist for the Institute of Noetic Sciences, if anyone knows about that. That's kind of the field we're in. And the other one's name is Menos Kafatos, and I think he's from Hungary or somewhere. Anyway, these 2 men are both PhD quantum scientists. They both wrote books called The Conscious Universe, and I had a question for them. So I managed to notice that Professor Kafatos was heading for the bathroom. So I headed that way and sort of waylaid him as he emerged, and I said, excuse me, you wrote a book called The Conscious Universe. He said, I did. I said, does that mean it's alive? And he looked at me like I was an idiot. He said, of course. Aha, here is a scientist saying the universe is alive? Whoa. And Dean Radin is a friend of ours, who is another one who wrote, and Deepak Chopra wrote one, and there's a new book. If you just look up The Conscious Universe, there's lots of perspectives on that. Dean Radin had the same answer to the same question. The universe, how could it be conscious and not alive? It's the same thing, isn't it? Life and consciousness, we don't really know the difference. So we live in a conscious universe. That's a major breakthrough from the reductionist Newtonian scientific vision of the universe, where it's a big mechanical clockwork thing. It's a grand machine. Very different. Does that change everything or what? You know? And it looks like we're getting toward the indigenous worldview. So here we are, Connie, darling.
So we chose this beautiful image, if you can see it, just to express this oneness with creation and all that is. And we'd like to bring you a few aspects of Indigenous cosmology that came to me 20 years ago in an article by Donald Fishiko. He's a professor at a native professor who was doing brilliant work. But I needed something that would put it into language that I could put it down into points that the Western mind could grasp. And so I came up with these points from his paper. It's called The Call for Native Genius and Indigenous Intellectualism. It's a great paper. You can get it online. So here we have, can you read that? Respect and reverence for all of life. The interrelatedness of all things and actions.
That's called entanglement.
The co-creative power of thought.
That's called the observer effect.
Concern for future aspects of present action. Living in balance. Concern for the common good. Trust in a higher power. Incorporation of metaphysical into physical reality. Like bringing the ancestors here and knowing that they're here with us. And so much else that's so much a part of the native way. Equality of all aspects of life, sharing, and cooperation. So we'd like to put that on the table as to help give a picture of this native understanding that we're bringing. And here we have
And just so you know, Connie's not the only one with Indigenous friends. Here are my friends. I grew up in South Africa, and this is in the northern part of the northwestern part of South Africa. The Bushmen of the Kalahari. You may be aware of them from the film. Anybody yell out the name of the film? The Gods Must Be Crazy. Right. Yes.
1 and 2.
Yeah, there was, that's a whole other story. So here's just a brief little word this is the message, today's message from the Kalahari Bushmen to each and every person in this room and everyone you know, which is the rest of the people on the planet. Open your hearts to others. When you do so, you will feel our spirit. It will make you dance, and it will make you happy, and then you too will be a Bushman. And then our respect and love to the other oldest people on the planet. These people go way, way, way back. The Bushmen and the Australians. And their vision, or this is probably the most famous quote from the Australian Aborigines. It has to do with our purpose on this journey to wholeness. Connie, would you like to read that?
We are all visitors to this time, this place. We are just passing through. Our purpose here is to observe, to learn, to grow, to love, and then we return home. So this is our journey to wholeness, and we'll be referring to this shortly. So what we're going to go into now is the loving nature of the universe. And this is what I got from being with these native peoples over 20 years. Not just Wallace, but Hopi, Maya, Wabanaki, Huichol, many, many tribes. Spirit brought me circumstances to show me these pieces of the puzzle.
And the Bushmen.
And the Bushmen, who are the most heart-centered people I've ever seen. So, and I think that the Gods Must Be Crazy came to us to introduce us to these amazing Bushmen who are just all heart. So, meanwhile, we are bringing tools to how do we live this indigenous way of life. We can see all those aspects that we showed you in those bullet points of this essence of their cosmology and how it translates into life. But how do we live it? We believe that no one has actually truly lived it yet on the planet. That is yet to come, because we feel that fear has been the Earth has been sitting in a field of fear in the past. In 1987, we feel it transitioned into a higher frequency. And it's going into an even higher frequency now. But we feel that all of humanity was influenced by this fear energy, because the native people have a cosmology, the essence of their ways, but living in pure alignment with it, and living in pure alignment with all the other wonderful things that Jesus brought to us all, with Christianity. Look what Christianity's done with the words of Christ, okay? Look, we have this idea of a way we can be, but we haven't been it yet. And that's up to us now. And so we say, okay, how do we bring this to pass? And we feel that we have to understand the true nature of the universe, how it works. And so with our work, we're bringing 10 assumptions for a new paradigm. And we're bringing in the idea that it is not only a conscious universe, it's a conscious, loving universe. Okay? And what I witnessed from being with the native people was that they know we all came with a purpose, each one of us. And that life is going to bring us every experience we need to become that purpose, because it's our gift. We promised we'd bring it. So how does that work? How does it work that an animal will come into your path to teach you a lesson when you need just that lesson. How can that be? Okay? You know, it's not just chance that when you're out taking a walk and very confused and a deer comes in your path to say, you know, be gentle. You know, that lesson for you. Well, I figured it out. It's a conscious, loving universe. That deer loves you. All of creation loves us, each one of us. And once we get to understand that, how powerful we are and how loved we are, we will change everything we do. I, in fact, was able to let my son drop out of first grade because I knew that he came with a gift and that everything on the planet was going to bring him everything he needs to become that gift. When the student is ready, the teacher will come.
Here's a question. Could we be on the verge of a new scientific paradigm? Here's a quote from Dean Radin. I mentioned him earlier. He's the author of a number. If you're not aware, R-A-D-I-N. He's a really entertaining, funny, total genius level writer and presenter and scientist. And he said this: as a result of his scientific research into consciousness, into quantum physics, he said, "It is known as a certainty that there exists an unimaginably powerful creator and sustainer of reality, and of you in particular. This creator is unborn, uncreated, undying, and unchanging." This from a scientist? Has he, just found Jesus or something? It's interesting, isn't it?
He found the conscious, loving universe.
So here's Grandfather Wallace Black Elk, because actually we're pretty tight on time.
Okay.
We have to give him a
Good. Okay, so we've called this slide Natakuya all my relations, and his grandfather to give us a little insight from his point of view. Now we need some sound. We had sound.
Hello, Natakuya. To all my listeners, I thank you to each television world. And it's about time we all come to focus our mind universally, because I speak from the universe of mind. And the way we're born with love, kindness, generosity, and giving. So we're born with love. So the love in itself is God, and love is mother. So mother is love, and God is love, and so on. So I think this is the way we should teach our children. So here we do away with the state and church and separate and allegiance to the flag and all that. Well, that doesn't cure nothing. So what we've been missing all this time is the spiritual language. That's what we've been missing. We go with our spirit. We base our knowledge on material, like we base our material based on molecules or genes or organics and mechanisms. So we have to see everything under a microscope. And if we see it, it's there, then we believe. But if we can't see it, if the microscope can see it, there's nothing there. So that's where this problem we're up to now is computer. We're going to go, all our minds will be tangled. It's like a big brainstorm. It's going to come up, because that storm is going inside our head. Because we lost that communication. So we have to rely on that naked eye. We lost our hearing, we lost the sense of smell, We lost the sense of taste. We lost the sense of feeling. We lost those. So now we have to rely on just naked eyes. We have to see, touch, and believe. It's called education. So we have to go understand, because what we've been missing, or what is missing all this time, because we distance ourselves from the great mystery. So we're doing everything without the Spirit guide. When people say this, the Spirit, the great mystery, look at me very carefully, for hand is sacred. The Spirit is sacred. So my hand are winged people, four-legged people, the creepers are people, the mammals, the crawlers, the fish people, and finally the tail end, the image of God, the two-legged.
And we have to wrap it up. So there's lots more, and we'll be going a lot deeper on Monday at 7 Centers Yoga in Sedona from 3 to 5 p.m., I believe, doing a little workshop called the Trust Frequency, 10 Assumptions for a New Paradigm. And you'll really, if anybody, any of you come to that, you'll really have some takeaways, but we have some takeaways for you today, because we know not everybody's going to show up because there wouldn't be room. So one of the takeaways here is that, and I think almost everybody knows that, everything is vibration. We are electromagnetic vibrating beings in an electromagnetic vibrating universe, which is evolving with us, because one of the ways I love to look at us is as roving sensory organs of the divine, or of the universe. We are it, experiencing itself. The universe without us, and us being everything that ever was and ever will be. Every conscious sentient being, and even the rocks and the stones and the mountains and the trees, are the universe experiencing itself. We are part of that. We have a job to do, which is to be the most beautiful blossoms on the tree of life that we possibly can be.
And what we're bringing is that everything is different in the different frequencies. The laws are actually different. The laws that apply to you will be expanded, or new laws will be made in your favor, and you will walk with the license of a higher order of beings. That is a quote from Henry David Thoreau, who, in his conclusion to Walden, that when one walks confidently in the direction of his dreams. Okay, that's a very important quote. And so we're just kind of running through this now, because we need to wrap it up. So we want to give you that the power of our consciousness creates our reality, and we have 7 A's of our consciousness that determine our frequency and are also our requests to the conscious, loving universe. We are loved so much by this conscious, loving universe that it gives us what we ask for. Okay, it has to. And our soul, when we incarnate, we say we're going to come on a journey to wholeness. Okay, we've given the loving universe permission to take us on our particular soul's journey. That's our overarching act of free will. So we come on earth and we forget that journey. And we incarnate into certain circumstances, and we can't know another soul's journey. We can only know our journey. And if we understand that everything that happens in our lives happens for us, not to us, for our soul's journey, then we leave the victim mentality, that vibratory level, we move into a higher frequency, and we find the magic. Okay, there's many aspects to this. It's a big deal, and we're just racing through. But meanwhile, I'm just going to say one more thing. We have these 7 A's of consciousness, okay? And
In a single sentence.
In a single sentence, actually,
So
it's
wrap it up and take it home.
here, with expanded awareness and accurate assumptions, we choose our attitude, period. We consciously direct our attention, align with our highest intuition, take committed action, and allow the loving universe to manifest beyond our wildest dreams. Okay? We can't even fathom what's in this other frequency. Okay? The Native people have some idea. They don't hoard, they don't save, they give away. Okay? Give it away, there's more. There's much more than we can fathom. Okay. And now we're going to release the ancestors. And we've got some handouts out there. Pick up our handouts, buy our book, come to our workshop, because there's a lot more. And we will close now with the song.
May I ask everybody to stand one more time? Oh,
Big round of applause for Connie and Andrew. Up next, we have Barbara Michael John Freed and Flavia Peters. Okay, so it's just Barbara Michael John Freed. The Path of Integrity.